I'm very excited to welcome our first speaker today from our hosts, the Sitra Fund, Mr. Janne Peljo, who's project leader of the Climate Solutions Group. Janne, take the stage.
Excellent, thank you very much. Thank you for setting the scene and the bar high. Apologies for not singing. So just to begin with a brief presentation of Sitra, so that everyone knows, Sitra is the Finnish Innovation Fund. We were set up 50 years or 51 years ago when Finland turned 50 as a gift for the Finnish nation by the Finnish Parliament. We are an independent think tank and we report directly to the Finnish Parliament. So our task and mandate is to be on the lookout for the future. So trying to grasp what are the main challenges for the Finnish society in the future and how could Finland today take action to be better positioned in order to address them and prosper also in the future. And that brings us to, of course, climate change. That's the defining issue of the time, and that's why Finland also has to take action in order to be prosperous in the future, shaped by action to curb climate change. To set the scene, let's go into a very quick deep dive on climate change. Basically, why we are here today is that even though there's ample of action in order to address greenhouse gas emissions, we're not seeing action fast enough, and we don't see it at the scale that's required. Especially for Finland, one of the key challenges is heating. We have already mainly decarbonized our electricity production, but what's still lacking is the means and technologies to really end burning something in order to create heat and to go into a burning-free and fossil-free heating system. Climate change, it's proceeding at a very alarming pace. I think none of you missed any of the reports last fall when the IPCC came out with the 1.5 degree report. And it's not only within the UNEs or the kind of green media outlets, but it's also shaping the headlines within the business community. And that's why, or that's because everyone is pretty much getting into pace in understanding that climate change will either impact our societies very fundamentally through its impacts, or then very fundamentally do the actions that we take in order to curb it. But either way, we will face significant changes also in the future. And if you look at NASA data starting from 1880s, you can see that the red chart is going northeast quite rapidly. That's the temperature over terrestrial areas. And basically, during this millennium, we've already had 18 of the hottest years on the record. And the one year that's breaking the pattern is 1998. So basically, within the past 21 years, we've had 20 of the hottest years on the record. And if you look at the IPCC projections, you can see that basically the remaining carbon budget allowing us to remain within the 1.5 degree warming, that's 420 gigatons of CO2, and our global current annual emissions are 42. So with very basic mathematics, you come into a conclusion that basically if we don't decline in emissions rapidly, we only have 10 years before we've already passed the thresholds that bring us to a global warming of more than 1.2 degrees. But looking at the bright side, we can see that the investment in low carbon solutions is on a very rapid growth trend. It's the green and blue here. But at the same time, you can see that still fossil fuels account for around 60% of all energy investments. Then when we look at the IEA data on what's happening on the technologies front and which of the technologies are on track to help the world to make it to the 1.5 degrees, the only one on green is the solar PVs. everything else is either red or yellow. And then that's also applying to wind power, which has developed quite fastly. And especially from the perspective of today, you can see that nuclear power is somewhere here in the chart. It's on red, but I really can't point to the red bars there. So it's way too low in order to actually have a significant impact on global scale as of today. And the second question is that renewable heat is horribly lagging behind on making the progress that's required in order to be fully applicable at scale and at a competitive cost. This is US data, and we're looking at cost of renewable power. And of course, they have fallen in certain categories over the past decade. Wind has come down 70% and solar PV almost 90%. So that gives us a glimpse of hope that actually technological progress really can bring down costs in a very rapid pace. And nobody foresee this coming 5 years ago. 10 years ago, that would have been a joke. 5 years ago, it still was a joke, but some were not laughing. And today we are coming to a situation where solar PV and wind power are really shaping power markets in many places of the world. So this is what we also want to see happening with nuclear. The case is that in the US, it appears that nuclear costs have gone up by 20% over the past decade. And that's, of course, very contradictory to what we would need in order to have it applicable at scale. And then coming back to the IPCC scenarios, which most of you, I think, know quite well, but the positive news is that we still have a chance to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. But that would require global emissions turn to a steep decline immediately. The more we postpone the decline in emissions, the steeper they have to go down. Then we already, at today, we need to start strongly increasing carbon sinks because those are very highly needed, especially in the later part of the century. And then global carbon neutrality has to be achieved by 2050. And basically we would need to halve global emissions by 2030. So that's pretty much the size of the challenge. So that brings us to the point that we need all the technologies that we can possibly apply used as fast as possible. And that's the X factor. If we manage to achieve rapid technological advancement that can bring new sources of energy and heat to the market at scale and at a competitive cost, that of course will help us in the burden that's we are having ahead. And a piece of marketing here. What we did last fall with a consultancy McKinsey, we created a marginal abatement cost curve for Finland in order to match Finland's 60% emission reduction path. And basically the very key narrative is that after we've cleaned our electricity production, then we'll have to electrify everything we can in the order of cost effectiveness, which basically means that at the very beginning we move into energy efficiency, but then we start uptaking electric vehicles, electric heating and electrification in industry. But of course, should nuclear power play a significant role, especially in the heating sector, that would be something that would alleviate the costs in this curve, should that be cost competitive. And that's something that I'm eager to learn much more about as of today. That's my 7 minutes. Thank you.